Welcome to Dave and Dharm Demystify, a FinTech Futures podcast, helping make sense of the world of FinTech and digital finance. Please sit back and listen as the two Ds take a subject and discuss it to make it clearer and easier to understand.
Demystify.
Welcome everybody to the Dave and Dharm Demystify show, and this week we're going to demystify serial entrepreneur David Sosna. Welcome, David. You've just sold a company and you've built another one, and breaking news, hot news, is that you've just raised finance as well.
That's right. Thank you for that. Yeah, we just raised the $10 million in our seed round. Yeah, so we're very happy about that.
Well, I mean, clearly, because you've done this in the past, then getting 10 million at seed is a pretty easy task. But look, for the benefit of our listeners who might not know you, do you want to give us a bit about your background, the previous companies that you kind of founded, and then what you're doing now, please?
Sure. So I've been doing FinTech probably before it was called FinTech, 25 years now. I've always been focused on problems around data or use cases around data. I started my career in the data warehousing world, which is an old term for collecting a lot of data in order to drive value. Very big storages, very long-term kind of ETL cycles. And then I got very interested in pattern detection and real-time processing. And I built a company by the name of Actimize, which started to get really serious around capturing patterns for detecting bad things, fraud, money laundering, potential issues, etc. Back then, it was a new thing because the US government started to ask banks to look at their data, and there wasn't any technology to automate it for them. And Actimize became the standard for monitoring financial activity. Probably, 200 to 300 banks are using it even today worldwide. And I did it for probably 10 years. Then I started to get a little bit bored. One of the things about doing regulatory and compliance technology is that it's very hard to change. Every change that you're making is not just for the bank, but it's also to support the regulatory kind of requirement. It's very hard to innovate in that type of situation. So I came up with this interesting idea of trying to use similar kind of concepts, pattern detection, etc., but this time to try to help customers manage their finance. The idea is that we can pick up cash flow issues, we can pick up situation where someone is overspending, etc., but instead of letting them figure it out, we be the one doing it for them, and then coming back to them and saying, this is what you need to do. That was the initial idea behind Personetics, which is my second company that I built. And that company also became pretty much the standard for financial insights. Again, north of 100 banks used it, probably mostly in North America, and then probably the Asian market, which was very advanced in terms of digital transformation. And that was an enormous thing for me. And then when the world of Gen AI started to present itself, I started to get really interested about the technology. I saw that there's some new things that you can do, which maybe we're going to talk about it a little bit later today. And I decided that it's a new opportunity, new era. So I'd rather actually go out and build something new from scratch. And that's where I started the Sympera, which is my recent adventure, which just managed to secure our first seed fundraising for $10 million. And that's what I've been working on now.
So David, I feel a bit like a fanboy actually, because my background is user experience and design, but primarily for financial services firms. And actually, I did a post on LinkedIn, it's 20 years since I redesigned HSBC's internet banking service. And one of the things that we did was we worked with something that HSBC had, which was called individual solutions, to deliver kind of targeted sort of advertising. Now, it was based on what we understood and knew about customer data at that stage. So if you can imagine 20 years ago, it was pretty limited. But I thought this was going to usher in a new and vibrant use of data within internet banking to not only communicate with customers, but help them in their financial services. And it kind of proved not to be the case. It was, a false dawn, shall we say. And then when Personetics turned up, actually, Dharmesh and I, we were really lucky. We had a lady called Gillian from DBS who came on, and she talked about the work that you had done within DBS. I was like, look, this is a company which really is trying to kind of connect users with their data in a useful way. And I mean, I followed Personetics. I love what Personetics has done, but I've always thought, well, there's more to kind of come. So I'm really interested in this conversation because for me, the missing bit was always what Gen AI can bring to the table in terms of its suite of tools. I still think we exist in a world in which banks are not monetizing the opportunity that they have with customers or adding value to customers in a way that they could do by actually using their data a bit more wisely. And I spent a long time saying to banks, like, if Mark Zuckerberg had a bank, what do you think that bank would look like? It would look very different from the mobile experience, would look very different from what you kind of see today. So anyway, I'm so delighted to meet you. And I think Personetics was kind of game changing in many ways. So excited to sort of hear about the future. Now I'm going to shut up.
I was going to say, if it was Mark Zuckerberg, he'd take all your data and sell it to everyone he could possibly find and fill the app with ads, the data.
It's sort of value creation versus value extraction. Like, I think in simple terms, internet banking and mobile banking sits as liabilities, whereas they could sit as assets. And
100%.
so how do we make these things assets?
No, so I came to a very interesting realization. And remember, I've been working with banks like the one that you mentioned and the DBS of the world and everyone. And over the last 10 years, they all spend a lot of time, money, and investment on the digital side. To your point, they were trying to compete with the creation of Mark Zuckerberg and the like. And what I realized after kind of doing it for a number of years is that they will never be able to win because their tech is not designed that way. And the only chance is actually to look at their core competence and say, what are we different than? And I came to realize that maybe they did a little bit of a miscalculation of the strategy. They should have gone omni-channel from day one. They should have actually said, our advantage as a bank is that we can give you a good, and we can argue about good, digital capabilities, and we have humans. And if we can combine it together, we can actually give you the service that you need. And I feel that that is something that Zuckerberg will never do. Try to call Facebook and see who's going to answer. And on the other hand, I think that banks like HSBC, call them good, bad, great, whatever, their tech is still a mega bank tech that has been built over a number of years. Their cores are still these cores that probably have been since you were there. And I think that what I came to realize is that they have to go after the human digital combination if they want to eventually win in the banking space. And that's where I started to think, hey, I need to build Sympera. Because when I went inside and see what's going on, I actually saw that they all cut back in a lot of their human capabilities. And right now, today, you can probably do more in digital than actually talk to a guy that is out of school, probably knows banking less than you. And it's not the right thing for these institutions. I thought that Gen AI can really make an impact over there because it can actually, quote unquote, talk, guide, generate stuff that will guide bankers, which was impossible to do a few years ago. And that's why I decided to build Sympera.
So the idea is about supporting internal staff or the frontline staff in terms of their relationship with customers.
Yeah, I spoke to probably, 50 banks, doing my research. And what I found out is basically that if you are a high-end customer, like Mike Zuckerberg, I'm assuming that your banking relationship is really strong. But if you are a small business, a mass affluent, a business that is making £2 million a year, revenue, that's not the quality service that you're getting. And if you go and talk to these bankers, you find out that, number one, in that level, the RMs, as they are called, have simply too many clients that they need to manage. And so they can't really know anything about you as a business and what are you really need. A lot of them are really young. I attended CBA Live 2 weeks ago in Orlando, and they talked about 45% turnover in year one for bankers. So that means that most of these bankers are young, not just young in age, but also young in their job. Their portfolio is new. They don't understand the banking products very well. The guidance that is being provided by the tools of the bank is very limited. Yes, they have triggering systems for some of them, and they would provide, let's say, in next best offer prompts, but they don't explain anything to the banker. So why would the banker use it if he doesn't know how to communicate that? What I saw in the Gen AI, I saw an ability to, first of all, provide explanation to a banker and say, this customer needs a loan because he's now actually aggressively discounting his product. He's actually penetrating, which means that if you guys can provide him with a working capital, he can actually execute on his business plan. So that's an explanation of why. The second thing I discovered that what Gen AI can give you is a unique ability to assemble different data sets. So if you look at traditional analytics, machine learning, it's all about structured data, most of it. And the work that we've been doing for many years is how to normalize the data and how to get it into a structure that we can run algorithms on and come up with decisions. In the Gen AI space, you can point him into a website of a company and tell it, please structure that for me. And then take that, compare it to the bank accounts that they have, and then let's drive a conclusion of what they're doing and what they really need. That capability did not exist a few years ago. And so I think that what Gen AI gives you is, number one, the ability to look at customers as a whole, not just based on the accounts, but their activity. Activity could be in a grand scheme of things, activity across the board, activity outside, activity inside. And the second thing, it allows banks to provide systems that are explaining themselves to bankers, to people, which means that then you can take a banker which is maybe young, maybe doesn't have yet the right capabilities, and explain to him exactly what do they need to do. And that's why I think it's a game changer, because look, I don't believe, for what I know today, so I'm not an AI researcher, but I know how to use AI pretty well. I'm fairly technical. I spent a year and a half now really digging into these models. I do not believe that the AI can compete with the best banker. But what I think the AI can do, it can replicate the knowledge of the best banker and actually embed that knowledge in conversation models, in guidance that you can provide the rest of the banker team. And I think that's the value of AI in this type of scenario.
It's like a machine-human interface, isn't it? So rather than a human-machine interface. I mean, it's really interesting. Really, I mean, I guess I'm thinking about like Alica, which is one of the fastest growing companies actually in the UK. Their story is around having frontline people. So you have an account manager if you're a customer. So they've kind of bucked that sort of trend. So I think you're really onto something. And completely take your point around the opportunities. I mean, one question in terms of the research that you've done, do you think that this is something that the banks will need to train their staff in terms of how to do this? Because, you know, I guess at one level, we all use ChatGPT and we all assume we're powerful, but there's an art form to working with this, isn't there? So when you think about this, as well as technical, are you thinking about how to kind of get people up and running with it?
So my first kind of comment would say 2 years from now, a bank will actually say, will look at colleagues and he will say, if they're not using AI to support, to enable their work, they're probably not good workers. I think it's going to be the standard. Right now, even today, if GPT is down, I cannot function. I'm writing emails, I'm communicating. I'm sure that many other people, especially not native born English speakers like myself, I need it as a day-to-day tool. I feel that will be the standard also for bankers. That's answer number one. It's not going to be you have to teach them. I think if they will not have something next to them to enable their work, they are not going to be able to function. Your second comment, I think, is quite interesting. So in my research, what I've done is that when I spoke to banks, I realized that there's no way you'll be able to insert another tool, another application into the desktop of the banker. So the approach that we took, we said, okay, what tools are they using? They're using Salesforce, they're using Teams, and we created interfaces into all of them. So we don't have an application on our own. We're simply going to be there in their current workspace, and we're going to be simply another colleague, so they can actually consult with, and they can talk to us in their current environments that they're using. If you look at again, a Salesforce or a Microsoft Teams for internal communication, I will argue that 99% of the banks will use either this one or the other one in the desktop of the banker. So yeah, I think that you have to provide them something that will be similar to existing tools that they're using. It has to be native within their current work desktop. But the other thing that I'm thinking is that you don't need to train them. And I think that in the future, it will be different. They will ask for that because they will see it as part of the tools that the bank will need to provide that to them. Absolutely.
This is an interesting point that you raise on the first aspect of this, which is the people will actually ask to use the AI in effect. Do you think, this conversation I had literally this morning with a bank, it's whether AI makes people dumb or whether smart people use AI, right? And I think what you're saying is that the smart people will want to use the AI so they can be even smarter. What's your view on, does it make people dumb?
Well, it does take away certain skill set that may be a little bit more used, but I don't think there will be any choice. It's like saying to me, okay, if you don't have a car, that means that you're going to be in a better fit because you're going to walk or run from one place to the other. And I would say, yes, how am I going to get there? So I think it's going to be the same thing. I think that it will be a tool that they will need to function in order to function. If they want to communicate, if they want to basically create outbound communication, I'm looking at myself. I'm now using it in almost every type of communication that I'm actually handling today. And I'm using it for coding today. I still code when I code because I'm not that in the details of this language or that language. I'm using it always next to me. Yeah, I think it will be the same. You know how many nuances there are in product schedules? Think about a young banker trying to understand, can you actually offer this thing or no? Is he licensed for that or no? Is it something that he has to read these disclosures or not? Why does he need to remember that, all of that? He will rely on an agent that will do it on his behalf. And I think that situation would be the standard.
In terms of the technology you're offering, I mean, is that an LLM? What is it that you will be selling to the bank? Because it's kind of sounds like a digital twin for your best bankers in many ways with the knowledge it can take in.
First of all, in terms of what it does, think about it in a very high level. It will proactively identify the opportunities for you, right? And then build you the right conversation model that you can use. That's number one. Number two, it will bring you the intelligence if you ask for it. Let's say when you're going out to meet a new prospect. So that will be it will assist if you ask it to. And number three, it will capture the business acumen, the strategies that best bankers are using, and then bring it to the rest of the team. It's that simple. In terms of the tech, we're using an agentic platform, which is basically a combination of many different small LLM calls with heavy business logic that combines everything together and tries to reduce the false positive, try to decide if this result is correct or not, and putting it together into a framework, which the idea is that you don't need to ask much to actually get the service. When I started, training LLMs was extremely kind of hyped, and I looked into that. And I realized very quickly that you cannot use an LLM, like the way you think about GPT, to solve a problem like that, because it is too big and it does too many things. You have to break the problem into many different small steps. And in every step of the way, you have to cross it with some traditional business logic. So we use an ontology, because when you have an ontology embedded next to the LLM, you can ask the LLM, use this in order to provide your output. And by that, you're making sure that you keep it within the guardrails of that particular ontology. So an LLM is a tool here because it can generate, and you can run it once with zero temperature, just to provide you with the temperature means how much it can actually be creative or how much it can actually. So when you ask the LLM to make a decision between a different set of values, you have to go with very limited temperature because you just want him to take a decision between different classes. Whether if you want him to provide an explanation, then you actually want to loosen up a little bit and give him the right examples and have him actually rephrase it, but use a product within that context. So it's an agentic platform that has multiple steps along the way. It is able to use open source LLMs, which is great, which means that the banks, which are very sensitive to their data, don't have to send the data into anyone else. And they can simply host it and use Llama or Mistral or any model that they see fit. And it is also something that you can import your knowledge into it. That means an ontology, that means product catalogs. It is also able to use external assets, all with the purpose of providing high quality deliverables, but also contained within the boundaries that you are actually defining for the system.
And why the focus more on kind of business banking rather than retail or even wealth?
because I think that the world of AI is an emerging world. I think you have to look for the use cases that are bringing the best opportunity. And also you have to frankly look for the areas that are more greenfield. Like I would argue that in the world of wealth management, there's actually some pretty good wealth advisors. And I think that if you try to do with LLM, I don't know, portfolio balancing, you're going to fail. Or maybe you will not be able to benchmark much better against standard technology. So although I know many people are doing that, I will argue that they will have to work very hard in order to separate themselves from the rest. But if you look at the business banking world, first of all, you're looking at companies that are a little bit larger than the consumer, meaning that their needs are more diversified, etc. But you're still looking at hundreds of thousands of businesses compared to corporations, which means that no one can track them manually. And so when you look at an AI use case, forget about Sympera in general, you're looking for things that have a scale, that can work well in an environment where you have hundreds of thousands of use cases. Otherwise, existing technology will probably do it as well as you do. And the second thing, you're looking for areas where the algorithms are not yet established, or not yet being validated, tested for so many years, because then it's going to be hard for you to imitate them. So yes, I think, if you ask my opinion, I think that mass affluent and let's say wealth from the lower part is a huge opportunity. But you have to pick where you want to start as a company. That's always I've been always implementing that rule. And that's why I thought business banking would be the right place to start.
I also think business banking is traditionally underserved by the banks, but it really matters. I think about when I did my startup, I banked with HSBC actually, and I had a relationship manager and he would come and see me once a month. I mean, we were a tiny business, and I remember his name. He was called Graham Bournes, and he came and he looked, I don't know, but he looked like he was interested in what I did. And
which is very important, right?
And because of him, I then managed to get into HSBC as a client. You know, I wrote them a letter saying your website's terrible, I could do a better job. And instead of throwing that letter in the bin, they invited me in. But I still remember Graham. He's part of my history as an entrepreneur. And I think people really underestimate, like when you're in business, you don't know what you don't know. There's nobody really out there teaching you about what you need as a customer. And so having like that frontline effort, I think scaling it up can be game changing, you know.
I'll tell you two interesting things. In the CBA Live, they showed some research over there, and I attended the session. I thought it was fascinating. So number one, the obvious one, SMBs are looking for deals. So if you give them better rates, they will actually utilize the service. But the other thing that they're really kind of lacking is time. They don't have the time to do the proper research, and it's very difficult for them to use a payment service from one party and a business account from another, and so on and so forth. So these HSBC of the world, they have a tremendous opportunity. Yet maybe they're not the cheaper one, but they can give you a bundle. They can give you the coverage that you need from end to end, but they're not taking advantage of that. And that's why there's a lot of players today that will offer you one or two products. And I think that in certain areas, they're very successful. But in the end of the day, I think that you have a balance, the balance between optimizing your fees versus the time that you want to spend in actually utilizing 2 or 3 different financial tools in order to get your work done as a small business. And that's why I still think that the traditional banks have a chance to win. And if you look at what happened in the UK, I know that 2-3 years ago, there were a lot of digital-only business banking initiatives. How many of them actually got into scale? Probably not a lot. And it's not that they're bad. I think all of them actually took some very interesting capabilities, but it's hard for a small business to actually use all of them together. Switching everything is not easy, as you probably know. And that's why I think, traditional banks still have a long way to go. I know from my discussion with banks that when you look at penetration of multiple products, payroll services, merchant services, you're talking about single-digit penetration. That's it. That's all they get. So that means that they're leaving a lot of money on the table over here, which is all about the service that they provide. And go back to my argument, digital and human combined together.
So I know you've been working on this in the background, etc. Like, how close are you to a launch? Are you already working with banks right now?
Yeah, so we're already testing it with a few banks. Obviously, we're not yet able to share the results. We picked the US as the first starting point to test the product because of the fact that in the United States, there's a lot of, we call them regional banks that are heavy on branches, right? So I thought, hey, we can really help them. And the plan is that within a few months, once we're able to present the numbers, to go out and do a more kind of massive rollout and then try to hit financial institutions worldwide. Obviously, the tech can work in different places, but I feel that the right place for it is geographies where you have a nice kind of setup of small businesses in terms of clients, and also traditional banks that do have the muscle, the branches, but are not utilizing correctly. And there's a few geographies, but the UK is actually one of them. That could be a great kind of fit for the service. And the idea is to take it one territory at a time, vet it, prove it, make sure that it works very well on a certain scale, and then start to actually roll it across the globe.
And I presume, I mean, it's early days, but I presume that the more knowledge you get within an organization, the more knowledge you'll have, the opportunities for branching out into sort of other products. So at the moment, most large banks target sort of their micro customers there with digital only offerings, but they've done most of them. They're really done. They don't do anything. So I can see you taking the knowledge that you get and actually perhaps offering it out more in a B2C way. I mean, I don't know. Probably it's too early to be thinking.
I always thought that the B2B and a B2C model cannot survive nicely together. There are a few great companies that manage to do that. At least I didn't think that we can. So I always thought that a company needs to, first of all, select what he wants to be, what they want to be, a B2B and a B2C. As I said, there are exceptions. But again, Elon Musk is an exception. I think most companies, they have to pick and choose their battles, and they have to do it very well. And I think that a B2B model is a model that I like because I feel that you're actually providing help not just for the end customer client, but you're also actually providing also help for the bank. That's why I always felt I like the space. The second thing is that when we started Sympera, we actually went out and hired and created relationship with a few bankers, like not banks, like actually people. And the way we started to train it, we showed them in the most systematic way, the outputs of the product. And we asked them to provide us back feedback, redlining, comments, etc. And that's how we started to train the product. We used real human feedback loops in order to build up the right knowledge in the system. And go back to your point, yes, I do think that there is tremendous opportunity with small business and maybe a little bit larger businesses, but also across. I can tell you for a fact that the crossing of wealth solutions into small business owners does not exist.
No.
And so, yeah, if you just start to imagine, expand that a little bit, you can do so much. And these processes, I do feel that those are business processes that require, again, human and digital. Now, again, Revolut may say that I'm wrong, right? Obviously, there are people that want to go all the way digital, but that's their strength. And I think that on the other hand, there are banks like the HSBC of the world that have other sets of strengths and capabilities. And I think that's what they need to use if they want to survive or to win the war against the Revoluts of the world.
I'm intrigued. So you're going to personalize the advice for the banker to give to the company, right? Are you going to do anything also to personalize the experience for the banker themselves? So, for example, let's say Dave is far cleverer than me. He loves reading, and you can tell by his bookshelf. So he'll get a nice big report, and Dave will love that. Whereas I have the attention span of a gnat. So anything that's like an infographic that summarizes the proposal or a short video or something like that would be better for me, right? Are you going to do anything to personalize for the banker themselves?
Absolutely. If I'll play something, will you guys hear it, like for my laptop?
Yeah. No, we absolutely will.
One small thing, and I think that will answer the question, right?
Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into Pacific Ridge outdoor gear. You're probably prepping for a meeting with them.
Sounds like it, yeah.
So we're just going to go over a couple of things real quick. First of all, just a really brief introduction to the business. They make premium hiking.
So when I just started to play out is a personalized podcast that we are preparing for younger bankers. So absolutely, we think that some people are more geared toward instruction using text. And some people like to take PDFs and read them. And there's a lot of young people that are more kind of into audio. So absolutely, we're using all the tool sets that AI can provide. And I think, frankly, that using more audio and other medias that are more easy to consume by people that are probably much younger than me, I think is the way to go with these bankers. As I said, a lot of them are much younger, in age, and are more utilizing or familiar with consuming podcasts than actually read long PDFs. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we're out of time, sadly. We're very much looking forward to seeing how the business develops. So congratulations on your seed round. That feels like a good step up the ladder, but I know there's a long way to go.
A long way to go. I've seen it before. I've been there before. Man, it's hard work.
We certainly know that you built 2 successful ones before, so this is only going to be your 3rd. So congratulations. We'll say congratulations anyway, because we know it's going to be a smash. So well done, David. And definitely let us know when you've got the next first client on board. We'd love to have them on the show with you.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to Dave and Dharm Demystify. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tune in next time as we take another topic and demystify it.